What do you mean by slam the door? Because when I think of slam the door signings, I don't think of Michael Conforto. I don't really like the type of signing. Not just like this year's free agent class. But the slam the door signing doesn't have to be right now. It could have been before.
It could have been before for sure.
Correct. So where before down the line did the Sox make the mistake that opened
Bryce
the door
Harper?
back up?
Bryce Harper. That's the answer. Period. Paragraph. Next
question. It is because they knew what they had coming up. They knew they had a center fielder. They knew they had a left fielder. You have your infield outside of second base pretty much done. You had all these starting pitchers coming up. You knew that you had arms that were going to be in the bullpen. You go out, sign a Liam Hendricks eventually, whatever the case is. Not doing what they should have done a couple years ago and signing Bryce Harper when they had a quote, the famous quote, "We had a seat at the table." That one stung. And I think what I mean by closing the door, I think when you see a team that is as talented as the White Sox go out and solidify and make moves. Look at what the Los Angeles Dodgers do, right? Every single year, if they get a hole, it is filled. They add. They don't just sit there and go, okay, we got our starting right fielder. No, they're going to keep going, and now that they have prospects, that can do that too. But I think where we get frustrated and where again, this close the door is it's the famous Kenny Williams quote or, meme. Like, well, let's just stay healthy. You're keeping the door open by keeping holes there, right? And trying to put tape on it.
Okay.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Again, nothing against Andrew Vaughn or Gavin Sheets, right? Because we know that they can perform, but you're not solidifying that stuff, right? Like you're not going out and going, all right, this is our division for the next effing 5 years. Watch what we do here. We're going to get this guy. We're going to fill. Instead, you're leaving holes and you're trying to okay, Josh Harrison at second base. I like the signing. Not a starting second baseman on a world championship team. That's just my opinion. I hope I'm wrong about that.
My next one here is the Craig Kimbrel trade. And I want to start to use this to evaluate where we are with Rick Hahn as a fan base. Because the last time that Rick Hahn was in a position where he needed to make a deadline move, it was the James Shields acquisition that set this team back. Was the Craig Kimbrel trade another one of those major fuck-ups that happened along the way of this? Because if you go back and you remove that trade and you have Nick Madrigal starting at second base, you're not signing Josh Harrison this year. You don't need to move that money. You can go into the market with realistically only one hole in your lineup to go put that finishing touch on what's going on here. Maybe you don't lose Carlos Rodon from your rotation while all of this takes place because you don't have the Craig Kimbrel money on the books. Was that a major, major fuck up that could have ramifications over the course of the championship window?
I don't think it was a fuck up personally. I will make that move 10 times out of 10. They did the right thing. They thought that assembling a high octane bullpen was going to be their best way to be successful during the month of October. So I would make that move every single time. And I said from the moment that he was drafted that Nick Madrigal was the most replaceable, quote unquote, core piece of this group, just given his skill set. So I don't think that was the wrong thing to do. We can talk a lot about whether or not the option should have been picked up and the ramifications that picking that up has had on the roster construction for 2022 here and beyond. That's a very valid discussion, and Rick Hahn deserves a lot of criticism for that. And, one other thing that I wanted to kind of circle back to real quick here, Sean, your point about closing the door when you have an opportunity to put a stranglehold on the division. You contrast what the Sox have done with their young core with the Toronto Blue Jays. You look at a team like Toronto, they have, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Kevin Biggio, Bo Bichette,
yep.
Lourdes Gurriel, Teoscar Hernandez, Alek Manoah. So they've got a core group right there. What have they done the last couple of years? They went out, Hyun-Jin Ryu, George Springer, trade for Matt Chapman, go out and sign Kikuchi. So they're going out and they're augmenting that young core that is still cost controlled right now. They're doing what the Sox should be doing right now. That's the contrast.
Yeah, and Tony, to your thing about Kimbrel, I'm not going to hate on Rick Hahn for doing it at the deadline. I was okay with it. You're going out, you're making a playoff run, you're solidifying a bullpen. We've seen over the last how many years now, bullpens are crucial when it comes to making a playoff run and in the playoffs. And did it work out? No. Like, he wasn't. Where he fucked up was picking up the option. And I do think, and I saw this on the old Twitter machine today, that there was a philosophy that, like, there was more to picking up that option, that they thought that they'd be able to trade him. And now you realize that, that's not going to work. And that's the fuck up.
I'm wondering where you guys were with this, because I've seen this on the Twitter machine a lot lately, and people are mad at him. And I do agree with something that both of you said. I would have done the trade all over again. I did believe that Nick Madrigal was one of the most replaceable players on this team. And I think that, to that extent, you can't go back and undo this, but I think it's going to have, and just, where he did fuck up is having the option, because I can make the argument, the option to take the option or not, because he pulled the trigger on that specific deal. I don't know what else was available on the market at the time, or what conversations he had around putting the finishing touches on the team last year. But if we go back to the trade deadline, I mean, I feel like a lot of people weren't exactly thrilled at that point in time with all of the moves that were made. If you go back to last offseason, we weren't thrilled with all of the moves that were made. We're never thrilled with we're never thrilled with what's going on. So it's important to take a step back, in my opinion, and try and evaluate what was good and what was bad, because we're always unhappy.
Yeah, no, we're never happy when it comes to off-season moves or anything, right? Because we're White Sox fans, and we know at the end of the day who's signing checks and who's giving that money away, and that's something that we'll never get to experience, the Bryce Harper big signing day. And we want it, right? We wish for it. We get told that, the Sox are in the mix. Well, that's all good.
The money will be spent.
Yeah, the money will be spent, but it's spent on guys like Josh Harrison. Nothing against Josh Harrison. I think he's going to be a good part on this team. But, like, I think we get so wrapped up in seeing the big stars, the Nick Cassianoses of the world, and the guys that are signing these 4-year, $90 million contracts, and knowing that we're never going to be a part of it, but there's that hope, right? Like, hope can drive a man insane, and that's what we have as a fan base, is we have hope. Now, would I go back last July and make that trade for Kimbrel? Absolutely, because it was the best move for them to do. They were solidifying a playoff run. Picking up the option is where the ramifications come in, because now you're hamstrung with money. You can't get rid of them. You have to pay it. You had to fill gaps at second base that, we probably can survive with second base. You don't know what you're doing in right field. You've hamstrung yourself now by picking up that option. And now you got to hope that the future Hall of Famer can be the future Hall of Famer and be able to not pitch. And then he goes out in his first time in spring training. And again, not to be it's spring training, but, like, that's when the fan base gets all riled up and we're going, why the fuck do we do this?